So we have Peter Kelamis on the call. He is an Australian-born stand-up comedian. He's an actor. He's a voice actor. He's done a little bit of everything, and he's a huge inspiration for me, mostly through Rolf's character in Ed, Edd and Eddy. As you can see, I'm wearing my buttered toast shirt right here.
Nice. Very nice.
Yes. So Peter, thank you so much for taking the time with me here. So,
My pleasure.
so what took you? So you were born in Australia. What made you decide to go to Canada?
My parents were both Greek immigrants, so they went from Australia to Sydney, Australia. Oh, sorry, from Athens to Sydney, Australia, because my uncle and his family lived there. So relatives tend to follow other relatives.
Yeah.
So they went there and lived there for a number of years. I was born there and then brought to. I didn't get to Canada till I was around 4 years old. But at about a year and a half, my parents sent me back to Greece, and I was being raised by my grandparents for about two and a half years because they
Okay.
were kind of setting up a home and finding jobs and stuff in Vancouver. And so it was a little strange to me because at that age I was growing up and all I knew as parents were my grandparents. So it's a bit of a strange story. So when they brought me to Vancouver to meet my parents, I was stealing shit around the house to take back to our village in Greece and wondering why we haven't left yet. I don't know who these people are. Um, and then I eventually settled in.
Okay, that's pretty crazy. So did you end up just living the rest of your life there in Canada for the most part, like growing up?
Yeah, yeah, until kind of later on, and got married and pursued work opportunities in Los Angeles and things like that. But we still have a home in actually in Vancouver right now.
Okay, great, awesome. And have you ever been back to Australia?
No, I was almost able to be there at a convention right about now. My
Oh,
convention agent called a few months ago and said it looks like Australia's going to happen, and I'm like, this has been my dream to get back to Australia. And then this whole virus thing hit and sent the world upside down. So, I mean, for me, from a work perspective, all of filming and recording essentially came to a standstill. There's still a little bit of recording going on, but studios and people who want to hire you are asking about home facilities and if you can record from home, and they're trying to get studio quality from people at home, which is kind of difficult to do unless you're spending a whole lot of money. You can lay down a good audition, but as far as recording completely from home, that's a bit of a different story. So we're all trying our best, but film industry is kind of shut down completely. I had auditioned for a few things before this whole thing happened, so they're all kind of up in the air and it's stalled and kind of waiting for an answer. So yeah, everything's kind of stopped.
yeah, everything's just at a standstill. Have you been staying indoors?
I was actually just out right now buying groceries because this is kind of my grocery day to go get sustenance for the family and come back with food. It's a
Did you?
very caveman like. You head out there and you look like Bruce Willis from 12 Monkeys go shopping, and then you burst through the door, wipe yourself down, wipe all the groceries down. My wife's doing that right now. It's really weird. It's really weird.
It's a whole process. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you do your fair share of panic shopping? Did you buy 16 packs of toilet paper?
No, we got to that kind of stage of things a little late in our heads. Just as it was happening, I remember being in a supermarket. We were still in Los Angeles, and they were like, "Oh, you can buy like 2 packs of toilet paper each," and we're like, "What? Well, I guess we'll get two then." And then within a few days, we had friends calling and asking for. So it happened really quickly. It caught people off guard. But even now, toilet paper, like I have I'm sure we all do. I have a system of stores I go to. Like this store is almost always has toilet paper. This store has, we go here for our wine. We go there for the rest of the groceries. So I have a bit of a circuit that I do just to fill our supply for a week or so.
That's funny, and it's funny because like in the future, I'm sure maybe like your grandkids will be asking Grandpa, why does Grandma always wipe down the groceries when she comes back from the store? And you're like, oh, it was just she lived through the quarantine, through Corona, like.
Seriously, I mean, we have a 10-year-old daughter, and it's just weird to hear her say it. It's a little sad too that she's got to live through this, but we all do. But she curses the coronavirus, like, curse you, coronavirus, because she can't go out and play with her friends. And so I feel bad for her, and we try to keep her as entertained as we can. And, I remember last night she didn't really want to brush her teeth. So I had to go up there and lay down a bunch of voices and imitate Shrek to get her to do it. So there's the benefits of being a voice actor. You can bribe them with impressions.
You're like, you're not getting any Shrek until you brush your teeth.
Yeah. You want to hear Princess Fiona? Then brush the top too, or nothing.
Oh, that's funny, man. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you a little bit of about your comedy, your beginning, the beginning of your career.
Yeah.
I wanted to know, well, first of all, how was being a comedian in like the 80s, 90s in Canada?
It was crazy. I was fortunate that I started going to these student comedy contests at lunch hour when I was in university. And the first time I won $10 telling a joke, and then that was it. I knew what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Nice.
And I used to go back with different material, whereas other people would go up and tell one joke. I would go back every week with like material. And they had a host from a local comedy club called Punchlines, which is now defunct, but and they used to see this kid come up and start doing, material and bits at this joke off. And they're like, dude, you got to get down to the club, like on amateur night and try it out. And I'm like, sure, yeah, okay. So I did. So by the time I got there, I had about 15 or 20 minutes of material, and it went pretty well. And then I kept going back because I loved it. And then I became a headliner within a year, fairly quick, even by today's standards. But so I guess it was a bit of a reflection of I guess it was going well for me, and also a sign of the times where this was like the days of the comedy explosion. I remember being at the comedy club. I had worked there for a number of years at this point, but I was sitting there with the manager and a club called from the outskirts of town saying we want to put on a comedy night, and he was like, yeah, we can't do it because we don't have any comedians. They're all booked.
Oh.
So there were more gigs than were comedians at that time. So it was insane. It was like trying to book a band in the 60s maybe. It's like, no, yeah, we're all booked. We don't have any musicians to give you. Really? No, we're done. Everybody's playing.
Yeah, I can see that. Cool. Okay, that's awesome. And that's cool that your university or your college provided that like little stand-up thing, like, or was it put on by the students?
It was put on by the student union of the University of British Columbia at UBC. So it was every Wednesday, the lunch hour every Wednesday. So I would, finish off class and then race down there and tell my jokes.
That's really cool that you guys had that opportunity. That's awesome. So I'm guessing now you're living in LA.
We kind of split our time with LA and Vancouver, depending on where kind of work is happening. I just did a couple of projects at the beginning of the year here in Vancouver. Neither of which, one of them is not aired yet. The other one is, I can't completely give it away yet. I'm dying, but it's a show on Quibi. Are you familiar with Quibi, the new kind of
the phone TV?
Yeah, it's kind of short for the phrase quick bits, Quibi. So they're all 10-minute episodes of shows. So the designed for people on the go that you're waiting for the bus and you can see this given show. And they've got a big library on right now, but I'm on a show called The Now, that was directed and produced by the Farrelly brothers, which was
Okay.
pretty cool because I got to work with them last year on a Louder show that they produced out of Vancouver, and and then they called me for this one and offered me the role, which was to feel pretty good, not even having to audition. You just get a call, and it's like, yeah, Peter Farrelly and his Oscar would like you to come to perform on his show. And you're like, yeah, I think I can make that.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, those are the calls, the life-changing calls there that you say, when you get at the beginning of the industry, when you start, building yourself up, you start getting those calls. Yeah.
It's really cool when it's rare, but it's really cool.
Have you done any comedy out in LA?
I've done a little bit out at the Improv, out at the Ice House in Pasadena, but I haven't done a ton of stand-up in LA. I've been there primarily pursuing like voice work and on camera work and things like that.
Right. So, how long ago was that you tried out your stand-up in California?
God, it's probably about a year and a half ago since I did a set there. So it's been a while.
Not too long ago, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think about, like, comedy, the whole comedy scene, and the whole like environment that comedians have to abide by so that they don't get in too much trouble because everybody's offended? What do you think about that?
It's really sad that it's come to that. I understand the reasons and the events that brought us to this point, but it's really sad because we, when I was starting out and still for years afterwards, we would do whatever the hell we wanted, and the crowd let you know if they didn't like it. They would. That's the beauty of stand-up. If they don't like the joke, you will know very quickly that they don't like you. They don't hide it. So it was kind of a self-policing kind of industry and art form, and that's what I loved about it. And but I mean, there were always topics that were kind of taboo that you knew you could do, but that you kind of avoided, right? And then there was groundbreaking people like Richard Pryor, Lenny Bruce, even Dice Clay, for that matter, whether you liked them or not. But they developed and presented styles that offended a lot of people. But if you didn't like it, you didn't have to listen to it.
Yeah. But now it's like, if you don't like it, I'm gonna contact you and your manager, and I'm gonna get a bunch of people to email you, and all this stuff, right?
Yeah. Or I remember Michael Richards a number of years ago. He was performing at the Laugh Factory, and he had a bit of a meltdown. I don't even know if it was a meltdown. It was in the middle of a show, and then he started firing out phrases, and he started firing out the N word, and he was riffing with the crowd and trying to be humorous, but it didn't go over. And not only did it not go over, but people started taping it with their cell phones, like from the crowd, and then it made the rounds, and it really affected him and his career. Now, I agree with the sentiment. It was poor choice of words, poor choice of topic, everything like that. But in this day and age, you screw up, chances are there's somebody with a phone to document it, and so that nobody ever forgets it. And you know what? We're all going to screw up. So most of us would prefer that there isn't video evidence of our screw ups.
Of course. And it's like,
when I was growing up, I can't imagine being in high school. I can't imagine being in high school right now with, peer pressure and everything else, especially like young girls, trying to deal with peer pressure from friends. It's like, when you can get attacked anonymously on Twitter accounts and Facebook accounts, and people being really, really nasty to you. It's a really dangerous environment for that. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, cyberbullying is really real nowadays. There's a lot of things being done to try to help that out, but like, it's the internet. There's no control. There's no limits.
No.
And so I was watching a few of your other interviews, prior to this, and I saw that, or I heard that you had a funny story about your stand-up where there was a mobster in the crowd that was messing with you, and you had to go out the back or something, right?
Yeah, I was at Yuck Yucks Vancouver, and there was this guy heckling, and then I eviscerated him pretty well. I just destroyed him, which usually isn't that hard to do because usually the hecklers are drunk and stupid, and you have a microphone, so you have the advantage heading in. So unless they're really intelligent and on their game, which has happened before, typically you can take care of them, and I took care of this guy really well. And then I got off stage, and right away the owners, who were kind of sketchy guys on their own, in their own way, came out to me and said, "Yeah, you got to leave by the back. He's by the front, and he's waiting for you, and you got to leave by the back." And I'm like, "Really?" So I had to do the spinal tap exit through the kitchen and out the back door, and off I went.
So do you have any other crazy stories like that one where like maybe your life was potentially in danger on stage or through comedy?
Once me and another comic got sent up to a very small town called New Denver, Yukon. It's in the Yukon or Northwest Territories. I believe it's in the Yukon. Oh no, it's New Denver, BC. It's right on the Yukon border. If I'm remembering correctly, I have to check my geography on it because it's a very, very small town.
Okay.
So they booked us, and it was like in January 4th, and it was me and another comic, and the other guy, Toby Hargrave is his name, a hilarious guy. He's a big guy. He's got to be like 6'2", and he's got a stockier frame on him. He's got some pounds on him, and so he's a big guy. And we get to the airport, and we're literally in a 4-seater airplane, or sorry, a 6-seater, and there's a band member, me and him, and the pilot. So there's 4 of us in here, and our bags. We're going for like 2-3 days. So we get there, and there's this kind of geeky looking pilot guy, and he's like, "Okay, everybody load in." So we load in, Toby gets in, and he sits in the back seat, and literally the airplane, which is on the tarmac, does this. The back end hits the ground. The tail hits the ground, and he's looking like at a 45-degree angle, and the guy's like, "Everybody get out, everybody up." He gets out, and he's trying to, this geeky guy is trying to balance the weight. So he thinks he's balanced the weight, puts Toby back in, same thing. It does a wheelie again. So we're on the tarmac doing stationary wheelies with the airplane. And then he goes back in, and then he starts taking crap out of there for like 20 minutes. And he's like, "Okay, everybody back in now." So we get back in, and everything is okay. Even I'm thinking, the tail hitting the ground, did that not affect anything, from a flight perspective? And he goes, "No, it's all good." And we said, "So how did you get rid of the weight?" And he goes, "Nah, I just took out the, like, I'm like, what? So he took out all the winter safety gear. We're flying up north, and we're not really flying really high. There's cloud cover, so we're always like about 2,000-3,000 feet, and that's about it. And this plane, every time it got near a mountain range, the engines would strain to get over. Like it was like really not a strong aircraft that we're in, right? So we get there, and the pilot has to stay over. This geeky guy, pilot guy, stays overnight, watches the second show the next night, and then we're flying back. And he's like, "Yeah, I don't know if there's a cloud cover. I don't know if we can fly back." And we just said, "We'll just, fly over the cloud cover. Can you not do that?" And he's like, "No, my learner's license says I have to have a view of the ground at all times." Like, what the hell, learner's license? What are you talking about? We're flying with the learner guy. So we're sweating bullets the whole way back. We're like, Buddy Holly jokes, and we're taking pictures, last known whereabouts. And luckily we made it. But, oh yeah, and then when we got to the plane, as we're flying back, he goes, "Oh, a lot of snow." He goes, "I got to de-ice the plane." And we're like, "Oh, there's some special device, a spray gun or that." So he's out with a car scraper and a ladder scraping the windshield. That's his de-ice thing. So we made it back alive, thank God. But that was the most treacherous flight, comedy related, that I've ever had to be on. And you get some really cool. Once I was in, and some guy was at the show, and he goes, "Hey, I'm the emergency helicopter pilot in the area. So why don't I come pick you guys up at 9? I'll take you for a ride." And, he's had a few beers. We've had a few beers. We don't think this is sure enough. 8:45, he shows up at the hotel and he picks us both up. It was me and a comic named David Bruce, and we went out to the rescue helicopter. He detached all the cables properly, gave us a safety demonstration, and off we went for like an hour joyride through frozen lakes and stuff up north. And he would land on lakes. It'd be like a blowhole, but 100 yards away on a frozen lake. And he'd go, "Watch this." And he'd land the helicopter on the lake and bounce on the ice, and then water would shoot out like 100 feet away. So things you'd never experience otherwise, unless you took some crazy helicopter. But I've gotten to do some cool stuff doing comedy.
That's pretty badass. That's awesome. Yeah, the plane, that's kind of scary. Was that pilot contracted by your like comedy kind of like, or whatever company you were working for at the time?
He was contracted by the people who booked us. It was a hotel casino, so they booked this guy, and
Okay.
and it was a bar called I believe it's called Gap Tooth Gertie's. And the reason I kind of remember that is they're famous for having a petrified human toe in a bottle of tequila. And you have to pay to, take a swig of the. Thinking about the virus right now, there's a bar up there that people get to put their mouths on a bottle of tequila with a human toe in it, and everything's fine. And this is how popular it is. Some guys go in and intentionally, they say if you swallow the toe, there's a $500 fine. And they said once a guy came in, grabbed the bottle, downed it, and then swallowed the toe, and then slapped down $500 because he wanted to swallow the toe. And they're like, "Damn it!" So they had to raise the fine to like $5,000, and then they had to find another toe.
Yeah.
So these are the bars I work in. These are the bars I worked in, coming through the ranks. The human toe bar.
Yeah. That's one.
With the amateur pilot. That's where I went.
That's one to put on the resume for sure. So how would you compare the comedy scene now in today's climate compared to back when you had just started?
We really you had to earn your stripes on the road. Comedy clubs are starting to get popular. Nowadays, if you want to start out in comedy, you go to a comedy club and go to amateur night, where it's a room full of people. It might not be a lot of people. You may not be on until 2 or 3 in the morning, but people are there to see comedy, as opposed to places I had to start out in. There were like some really rough bars where there were, fights during the show and people getting kicked out, and just the hockey game. They wouldn't even try. This is the worst. In Canada especially, you didn't want to do any shows in April and the first couple of weeks of June, because hockey playoffs, and 99% of the bars, if you were booked and doing a comedy show, they would not turn off the game.
Wow.
And especially during the playoffs, they went into overtime. It wasn't a shootout or anything like that. It was overtime until somebody scored. So sometimes they could go into double overtime, triple overtime, whatever. And you could not turn off a TV. Like if you're playing a bar in Edmonton, Wayne Gretzky and the Oilers playing, and there's no chance in hell they're going to turn off Gretzky to see, some scrawny kid tell jokes. It's not happening. So they put you in an area of the bar where there were less TVs, less chance of you getting hurt, and then you would do your show there.
Sounds pretty wild.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I've gone to a few open mics myself, trying out some comedy. Not that good.
Cool.
I learned that quickly. Like you said, you'll know immediately if they like you or not.
Pretty quick. Yeah.
Yeah. But for the most part, comedy now, like open mics and stuff, they are very welcoming for the most part, and I feel like
Right.
everybody, like the comedy scene, really tries to inspire other, up and coming comedians to just do their thing, get out there and try it. Um,
Right.
so I really like that about today's climate. But then again, like I said, you know, the whole climate of today. What do you think? Like, do you think that the climate of today, does it constrain comedians and limit their comedy, or do you think it's an opportunity to be able to push buttons even further?
I think it pushes them to be more clever. When we started out, there's a lot of guys doing, your basic kind of, dog poo poo condom kind of jokes and all that. And I think comedians of today have already seen all that stuff. It's already been done a million times. And I think the difference I've seen is comedians starting out sometimes are starting out at a more intellectual level of jokes, which is a good thing.
Who's one of your most favorite comedians of today?
Of today, let's see. I mean, I still, some of the, I have some of the greats that I grew up with. Like the Seinfelds, and even Jay Leno's day when he was doing a lot of stand-up was one of my favorites. And Paul Reiser at the time. So this is going back. Ellen DeGeneres is a fantastic comic. And Louis C.K. prior to the whole touching himself thing and he still is a good comic. It's just unfortunate that that's tainted his career, but he's a fantastic comedian. If we just want to talk comedy and skill, he's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like now, thanks to the internet and all this communication, that comedians, especially comedians, not comparing like with musicians or actors, but comedians especially they can't really separate themselves from their art.
Yeah.
Like it's like whatever a comedian says, that's linked directly to that comedian. That it's linked to the person. Like they're just like, oh, you're a terrible person for saying this, like blah blah blah, and so if you were to do anything wrong, or if you're just kind of like a shitty person in general, that will come to light, and your career will be tainted by it.
Yeah. You know what? I'd say one of my favorites. I had to think about it a sec, but Brian Regan. I don't know if you're familiar with Brian Regan.
No.
If you see a clip of him, he's worth checking out because you probably heard his bits over the years, whether it be at the Montreal Comedy Fest or elsewhere. But I got to work. He was on set when I was working on Loudermilk last year because he was one of the regular characters on it. But he's one of my favorite guys, and just getting to meet him was kind of a thrill for me. And he's one of these guys, and it's funny. Somebody on Twitter posted, it's essentially one of his bits without even knowing it, saying that they had their DoorDash food guy show up, and they're like, and he said, "Enjoy your meal," and she goes, "And I couldn't help but I just said it, you too." Damn it. And Brian Regan has a 5 to 7 minute bit on the "you too" phrase, like getting dropped off at the airport by a cab driver. It's like, okay, you enjoy your flight. You too. If you fly in the future, hope it's enjoyable. I'm a moron. And he's one of these comics. He has another bit about buying a fridge. Like I don't want to say a funnier Seinfeld, but he dissects things in such a unique way, and his character is such a unique person that it's so fun to watch the guy, right? Like, like I say, when I say he has like a 7 minute bit about buying a fridge, about, the guy saying, hey, what's the difference with fridges? And it's like, well, this fridge keeps your vegetables cold for $800, and this fridge keeps your vegetables cold for $2,000. And then it goes on about the crisper. There's the reason I love stuff like that, observational stuff, so much is because everybody does that every day. They go to their fridge, and yet this guy makes it a hilarious journey into your fridge, and I think that's amazing. It's amazing that comics that can do that.
Yeah, I feel like observational humor is reigning supreme nowadays.
Yeah.
Over a lot of things, because like you said, everything's already kind of been like said or done in some sort of way or extent. Yeah. So we gotta get they gotta get clever and creative, and just kind of like go straight down to something that is relatable to everyone, which is just
Yeah,
modern, mundane, stupid crap that we do every day, like a fridge.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And in addition to some of the male comics like Ali Wong, is hilarious, hilarious. We watched her second comedy special on Netflix because her first one just destroyed, and it's a tough thing to follow up. But there she was again. I think she's pregnant. She's pregnant again in the second one. I think she's pregnant both. But God, she's really funny, and it's just like this personal angle of her life that she just shares and makes hysterical. She's really great.
Ali Wong. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll check her out too. I think I did see the first one. That one came out a few years ago, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember seeing a pregnant lady on stage talking about it. Yeah.
That's her. That's her. She's really good.
Yeah. So you've done so many things in your life. Have you ever thought about, and you participated in all these, different projects. Have you ever thought about making your own or writing your own show or anything?
I have. It's one of these things that I have in notes around my office that I need to more streamline into an actual script, which I'm slowly. But yeah, I have thought about that many times. It's not an easy thing to get done, but if you don't do it, then you'll never do it.
Right.
I mean, I go back to Gretzky, Wayne Gretzky, being a hockey fan. His famous quote is, "You miss 100% of the shots you never take." And it's very true in life that if you, that's why I hate people that just, we all have these asshole friends that sit there and just criticize you when you try something, yet they're the ones that are sitting there doing nothing. There's no shortage of people that will sit on the sidelines and tell you what you're doing wrong, but you got to be the one that decides what you want to do right. And it's very self-motivating. It's tough sometimes to remember, especially in these times, being locked in your homes. But maybe this is the time to write that script. Maybe this is the time to write that book, write that song, do whatever it is that you want to do right now. That right now, everybody's got time in their hands. So this could be the time to do it. This could be the time for me to do it too. That's a good thing to bring up.
Yeah, definitely. Did you have any thing in mind specifically, like maybe animation, live action?
There's a live action series that I've had in my head for quite a while, and I've got a bit of the script down already. And my gauge has always been, hey, does it make me laugh? So that's my gauge, and hopefully other people agree. That's always been my credence when writing a joke in stand-up. That wow, I think this is funny. I would laugh at this. This makes me laugh. For the most part, people have agreed over the years. There's been sometimes, like I say, that sometimes you do a joke and it's just you think it's going to kill, and it's just nothing.
Crickets. Yeah. But so did your show? Do you want that to be animated, or do you think it'd be live action?
I've got another couple of animated shows that I have in mind as well. There's a buddy of mine that we wrote one together, and we were getting a little bit of traction on it, but I don't think we're going to move forward on that particular idea. But we have a couple other ideas that we plan to get together, and animation director, and actually he directed Ed, Edd n Eddy. Terry Clausen is his name, so he's a good buddy of mine, and we stayed in touch over the years, remained friends. And like I say, we continue to write together when we can. And again, this being holed up in our premises right now might be the time to do it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome that you are still in contact with him. Do you still have any contact with anyone else from the Ed, Edd n Eddy show, or maybe Danny Antonucci?
I've seen Danny a few times over the years. The last time was at a wedding of a friend of ours. And that was good to kind of hook up with him again. Sam Vincent, I see occasionally.
Okay.
Who else? Matt Hill, I still see occasionally at auditions and things like that. Tony Sampson kind of fell off the grid. He moved to Alberta and went to work in the oil fields, like literally.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he just got out of the entertainment industry altogether. And so there's talk of I don't know. I don't want to say talk. Maybe talk of is the wrong thing. There's an individual who's contacted me and the other guys from the show a few different times trying to do an Ed, Edd n Eddy reunion at a convention. So he's contacted me again, and he keeps plugging away at it, trying to make it more of a reality. And I have my convention agent kind of communicating with him to see if we can make that happen. And if he can't do it, we may just try to make that happen at a convention somewhere else. But it's something we've been trying to do for the last little while. Obviously, all the conventions are on hold right now. But
Yeah.
we get to. I mean, I still go to convention, and let me show you something.
Yeah.
I'm in my studio/office right now. But let me.
Sneak peek into the world of Peter.
Yeah.
All right.
As I stop the interview and rearrange my place.
Yeah, you're all good.
I'm all good.
You're all good.
Okay. No, but going to conventions, I still to this day get a ton of Ed, Edd n Eddy fans, and like this is one of the things that I always kind of run out of when I take them is planks. So, like, I honestly I make these myself because I always loved woodworking. It's an odd thing, but I always loved it growing up. I love woodworking, so I have a template of these things, and I kind of pump them out, and these are kind of a big hit at the conventions. So what can I say? There's still a lot of Ed, Edd n Eddy fans out there that come out to conventions, and I get a kick out of it. I've been at KamehaCon, which is a Dragon Ball Z dedicated convention, the last 2 years, and we're supposed to be there May 1st for the third one, but that's getting postponed. But I had a lot of people asking for mishmashes of Rolf doing Goku. So it's kind of like Kamehameha, head boy. So, get a lot of those. I get a lot of those.
That's amazing. That's awesome. That is great. I actually, since we're doing show and tell, I'll show you the tattoo I got of Ed, Edd n Eddy.
Yeah. Oh, you were telling me about this.
Yeah, I'm gonna stand on my chair here because it's on my leg.
Sure.
But let's see here. I'm gonna try to.
Oh, there they are. I see him.
You're like.
That's awesome.
So Eddie's playing. Double D's playing his little funny string instrument, and you can barely see it. Ed's playing the sax over here.
That's awesome. That's awesome, dude.
Eddie's up top. He's playing the triangle because not much skill there. But, yeah. No, that's awesome. I love that you did that little Rolf Goku bit. So, when you were working in Ed, Edd n Eddy, were you working directly under AKA Cartoon?
Yeah. It's Danny Antonucci's company, so he was it's his baby and very hands-on, and he was quite the you hear a lot of things about Danny and his directing. He's a very, I don't know, perfectionist is the right word. A lot of times he would have us and more of the Eds do the same line like 40, 50, 60 times because he knew exactly how he wanted it, and he would keep doing it until it came out exactly the way he wanted. And as frustrating as that can be as an actor sometimes in the room, the result kind of speaks for itself. That I think Ed, Edd n Eddy as a show holds up over time, and the time and energy and detail that went into it is the reason why.
Yeah, definitely. When you would do your voiceovers, how long would it take from the voiceover to see the final product of your voice actually being brought to life?
It would take months. and we, at the time in Vancouver, we couldn't even watch the show because it was on the Cartoon Network, or yeah, it was a Cartoon Network in the States. I forget. There's a Canadian version and an American version. And it was on the American one, but it was not on the Canadian one. So we couldn't even watch it, which was crazy.
That's weird.
Yeah, so we would, after a number of years, we would get certain cable channels that picked it up. Eventually, Canada did pick it up, but for the first few years, we couldn't even watch the show. So we would do it not really knowing what to make of it. We knew it was getting kind of popular as the years went by. We got to go to the San Diego Comic-Con. One year they flew us all down, and we, signed photos and met fans and all that. And we were in one of the exhibit halls, and they said, it's the Ed and Eddie panel, and it was packed. It was completely packed.
Yeah.
And you throw out the voice. They went down the line and said, please introduce yourselves, and they just got to me, and I just went, "Attention, urban rangers," and then the place went bananas. And it's like, that was one of my first experiences in a convention like that, with a room full of people that are just diehard fans of the show that you're involved in. Is really it's a pretty cool feeling, man. It's kind of a personal rock star moment where you're like, wow, this feels pretty good.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask, like, since you're not like an on-screen, a very active on-screen actor, you're more of a behind-the-scenes kind of voice actor for the most part. When people approach you, it's usually because they've done their homework and they know exactly who you are, and so that like makes them, or that gives you kind of a sense of like, oh, like it's a more dedicated fan base, like it's way more personal.
Right. I know what you're saying, the animation world, yeah. And again, that's internet's fault, or that's the reason behind the internet's influence. Because they can put in your name and see your face. And I mean, the main conventions I go to are either Stargate based, from Stargate Universe, where people know me visually from that. And a few other things. That's probably the most visible on-screen thing that I had done. That went for a while. And the other thing is, Ed and Eddie and Goku are probably the main voice things that I've been known for. But like you said, you're absolutely right that at conventions people you have your banner behind you, and they'll see it and just go, what really? Some of them are freaked out, like, some of them are like, do the voice, because it's kind of instinct, at a convention you get asked that a million times, but it's, you got to be nice and accommodating, because, you've been there all day, every day for 3 to 5 days kind of thing. But for them, it's the first time meeting you. So, you want to make the meeting a nice experience. So yeah, you throw out the voice.
Definitely. And I've seen that you've done a lot of work, a lot of like Barbie movies as well.
Yeah.
Now I wanted to ask, is that like, and I'm sure since you do a lot of voice acting, you do participate in a lot of kids movies and stuff like that. Now, when you do those things, are you doing them out of like a pure business opportunity, or are you doing it maybe because like you have your daughter and that once she sees it, or millions of people, millions of little boys and girls around the world will see it, does that bring you like joy knowing that you're part of that? Like,
I mean, as an actor, unless you're at a stage where you get to pick your own projects, and I would say there are very, very few people anywhere at that stage, you kind of go where the work is. And those are things that I didn't just get. I went out and auditioned for, and being a voice actor in Vancouver, the breakdowns would come out and say they're auditioning for this, and you go in and audition and do the best you can to get the job. And I was lucky to do, I think I've done like 7 or 8 Barbie movies, I think.
yeah.
They would do all of them in Vancouver. They kept coming back. They liked doing them here. So a lot of times you would see a lot of the same cast because they liked a lot of the people that they worked with previously and would hire them again. one of the earliest ones I got to do was it was Barbie. It was a Barbie and the Nutcracker, where I played Pim, which was this ferret with like a really Weasley English accent, and I was playing like the sidekick to Tim Curry, and we just assumed, as in a lot of these records, that he would be in L.A., London, wherever he is, and just phone patch in his voice. But no, we got to work that day, and there's my mic, and I'm next to Tim Curry, so recorded with him for 2 days, and it was a blast, because I'd fired out the voice, and I got nominated actually for a Premier Magazine Voice of the Year on that particular project. I didn't win. I lost out to Scott Wolf from Party of Five. I don't know what the hell he did, Scott Wolf, but he won. But anyways, but I showed up at work. The voice I fired out was
Hello, sir. You're looking particularly regal this evening.
And I remember I just fired it out, and Tim Curry just looked over and he's like, yeah. Just that wasn't a line, it was just a critique. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. Okay. That's the thing with this industry. I mean, occasionally I work with a lot of well-known people, famous people and all that, but every now and then you meet somebody who is kind of a personal favorite of yours. And then this Quibi, I just did I play the husband, an extremely well-known actress that comes from a sci-fi background. I'm not going to say it yet because it's not out yet. Quibi has been released, but that show has not been released yet, but I will be screaming about that one when I can. But that was one of the moments where I got to work and I was like, wow, that's her. Like, that's, wow. It's, you get a moment like that. One of the coolest moments I ever got to do was doing stand-up and improv, and Robin Williams popped in when he was filming in Vancouver and started improvising with us. So I got to improvise with him a few times and introduce him on stage a few times. And, probably the pinnacle of my comedy career, because after one of the improv sets we did, he came backstage and came right up to me and he was like, "Oh, you're very funny." And I was like, "Wow." Robin Williams just told me I was funny, man.
Not everyone will get to hear that.
Yeah.
I heard a little bit about that in another interview you did with Robin about the Robin Williams thing. That's just awesome. Were you ever in contact with him afterwards?
No, he ended up coming back to Vancouver. He filmed a number of movies here, and then there was another one-night comedy club called the Urban Well, where it was this neighborhood bar that my friend and my other friend used to put on a comedy show at, and it became super popular. Like, there were lineups out the block every Tuesday, and I remember Sarah, other comics that were coming to town knew about this place. Like Sarah Silverman dropped by one time, and there's all these well-known comics just drop in because they go, "Oh yeah, the Urban Well, I heard about this place." And then he, after we had filmed, Robin Williams was back in filming. I don't know what he was filming. RV, I think. Or some other movie, but then he would start dropping in again on Tuesdays doing stand-up.
That's awesome.
He would just kind of hang out with us at the back of the bar, and random people would come up and they're like, "Can I get a picture?" And he's like, "Oh, no problem." He was always very accommodating with people. I know he probably got it 10,000 times a day anywhere he went, but I never saw him say no to an autograph or a photo. He was always very gracious. And even with the comics too. I mean, I was kind of shy to get a picture with him, to be honest with you. I mean, I said, "Oh yeah, we did improv." And he's like, "Oh, I remember." But a buddy of mine was like, "No, we take a picture." And then the three of us, he made me get in there with a picture of me, him, and Rob. And it's a great shot. It's a great shot of three.
Yeah, I could see, you being nervous to be with Robin Williams. Like, I don't know. I see it. I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, so out of all the voice acting that you've done, who would you say is your overall favorite character that you played?
Rolf.
Just flat out?
Yeah, flat out. I've done some fun ones where I got to do some really cool voices and all that. And you always like to. I grew up doing impressions, first at home for my family. When I wanted to get things, I would do impressions of like Tim Conway from the Carol Burnett show when we wanted to get taken out for ice cream. So I grew up doing this. This was just a part of my upbringing. That it was. I used to tape Monty Python episodes on my little cassette player, play them back, and then redo all the voices, like imitating them. So for me, it was second nature to just do weird voices, accents, things like that. And I always love just doing the weirder the character. When I get a breakdown of a new animation show, they use a piece of paper, and there's usually, not always, usually a picture of the character, a sketch of and then there's a big paragraph description of what the character's like. And I'll be honest, I rarely spend a ton of attention on the written description of the character, because if there's a photo, pretty much right away what that character is going to be. I think every voice actor does that. They can see a photo and go, oh, okay, that's what I'm going to do for this one, because that's what they look like, and you double check, because it says, if he looks like Elvis, but then you miss the part where they say, yo, but an English accent, Elvis. And you're like, oh, really? Okay, I didn't see that coming.
Right.
But I like the weirder the better for me. I like throwing on accents and imitating. Sometimes they ask for imitations of celebrities. One job I had once was doing the Monsters University video game for Disney, and they put out a breakdown saying we need a Steve Buscemi voice match, and I was like, oh, well, I've never even thought about doing Buscemi before, so I kind of studied Buscemi a little bit. And for me, it came down to, because every voice, you can break down an imitation of a voice. For me, it's a puzzle. And sometimes it's one thing that and sometimes you see it and you can do it. And other times you see another impressionist do it, like Dana Carvey, like when he used to do George Bush. I'm not going to do it. Once he did that, everybody's like, oh, yeah, that's the key. That's the key to doing that impression. And for me, watching Buscemi, it was always like, he's got too many teeth in his head, right? There's got to be like 6 extra teeth in Buscemi's mouth, right? There's way too many. It's to the point where he can barely open his mouth. And then I tried the impression. It's like, oh, what are you talking about? That's ridiculous. And I did it, and I ended up getting it. And they were like, no, you sound exactly like, and I'm like, okay, well, I can't even hear it in my head, because when you talk like this, the voice is in your mouth, and you can't hear it as well when you're exuding it. Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, so I couldn't even really hear it properly, but I ended up getting the gig. So that's cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. And would you say it's harder to copy something that already exists, or coming up with your own to match a character?
Typically you can tell right away whether you can imitate somebody, I think. Sometimes it takes a lot of work, but for me, I think if you've done voice for a while, you can kind of know whether that's within your ballpark and your range. Sometimes there's breakdowns for video games and stuff, and they're like, oh, we want a big hulking character. It's like, well, I can try to do it. But I know guys that are that size that talk like that naturally, and I'm like, well, give it to them, because they're going to get it.
Right.
Where I know where my range is, and you try to take advantage of what you got.
Shut up. Hold on, sorry about that.
That's all right.
Dog's barking. All right. So when how long into your career with AKA Cartoon did you finally see the first episode of Ed and Eddie and saw your voice?
I think they played us an episode once it was done. I think the first one. I think we did it, and after a few months, they showed us a clip. I think that's when I first saw it, and that was really cool. That thing.
Were you satisfied?
Yeah, very. And initially, we had the whole cast in the room when we record. All the Tinker sisters, Plank had no lines. Johnny, everybody. We were all in the room, and I mean, I'll be honest, even in rehearsals and records, like Rolf would crack up. I say Rolf, he's an entity, but Rolf and the lines that he had would crack the room up. You know, a lot of takes would get ruined because I mean, even I would start laughing because there's sites on the internet still that is like, you know, Rolf quotes, and there's pages of them. And
Yeah.
I go to them occasionally, and I just, you know, there's some I remember, there's some I don't, because the show spanned over 10 years. So if you ask me, you know, a line that I did back in, you know, 1994, it's like, okay, well, I might not remember that, but I remember the character well, and it was by far one of my favorite characters to do, but hands down.
Would you say that Ed, Edd n Eddy would be accepted as a kids show in today's climate?
I think so. When you see like things like Rick and Morty and things like that, I think Ed and Eddy was probably, although they're not as like risque as say a Rick and Morty, I think it did break down one of the walls that in animation that prior to that, I mean, the Beavis and Buttheads were changed animation and stuff too, where it's like, wait a sec, you can be that risque with youth, you know, listening to the show. Well, yeah, you can actually. You know, you're not. There's a lot of worse things out there than a cartoon being a little bit risky. But I think Ed, Edd n Eddy at the time did break down a few of those barriers.
Yeah, it was super groundbreaking. What do you think about the animation style? Like, what do you think compared to now? Like, how do you think that animation has been dumbed down now that we don't really stick to frame by frame and we're doing more of like vector based, you know, kind of animation?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the whole frame by frame thing that's why it took so long. That when you said, you know, how long till you saw a show? Well, it would take ages. It would take months and months and months. And we visited the studio before, and it's literally, you know, from page to page to compare the movements. It's agonizing. You know, what is like 36 frames a second? So 36 sketches to portray 1 second of movement. It's astonishing. And then the style of Ed, Edd n Eddy with that kind of constant waver was unique, because it's like up till then, I'm sure certain animators and stuff were aghast when they first saw it, going, "Oh, this is blasphemy!" You know, you can't do that and say that and have wonky animation. That's not right. But you know, in one aspect of it, it's like, yeah, it did get watered down a bit. But then you look at some of the things that, you know, Pixar and stuff do, and you're amazed all over again. So generationally, I think there's big jumps that happen, and I think we were one of them, but there's been a number of them since then, and I think there will continue to be.
So do you think that in terms of 2D animation, do you think that this vector-based animation is kind of like, so to say, dumbed down compared to frame by frame, or do you think it's like, because like you said, Rick and Morty's really, like, they really got it. They're vector-based, but they do it really well. But like, would you say, like, for instance, like, I don't know, have you seen a lot of the new Cartoon Network kids shows, like the Teen Titans Go reboot or the Powerpuff Girls? It's all like, it seems very soft and like round, no hard edges, like, kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, my daughter watches a lot of those shows, so I hear them in the background a lot. Yeah, I think, I don't know if dumbed down is the phrase, because I don't want to demean it, but it's certainly, I don't know, it's a filtered version, I guess, maybe of animation. I'll put it that way, because again, I don't want to paint it as bad or poor quality or anything like that, but it's definitely a filtered version of it, I think.
Would you say that you've watched all the episodes of Ed, Edd n Eddy?
You know, every now and then I'll go to the internet and I'll buy, you know, a season, you know, because they're hard to find. They're not easy to find.
Yeah.
So yeah, I need to do my homework and finish up the library so my daughter can watch it.
Do you watch a lot of modern cartoons, like maybe adult cartoons now?
Not a ton. I mean, I have, and that's mainly because I have very little spare time. I mean, more right now with the virus thing, but overall, I have very little spare time. And maybe we have a daughter that takes over the TV from time to time, like any other parent does.
Right.
So she'll watch her shows, and then when we get a chance, we'll watch our shows. And in between that time, there's very little time left to watch as much as you'd like.
Right. Um, what's your like preferred profession? Because you do a lot of things. What do you think is your favorite? Where do you find yourself most comfortable?
I think I would have said stand up a few years ago because it was the most gratifying, from an immediacy perspective. Like I was saying, they let you know if they like you, kind of thing. But I really enjoy working in film and television. I really do. It's a different kind of an animal because you're waiting around for hours and hours and hours, and then you're like, okay, now you're up, and then you got to do the same thing 30, 40 times and make it look fresh every time from different angles and different perspectives. And to me, that's challenging to me to keep the energy the same and do what you want to do. Because I mean, when you're sitting in your trailer sometimes 6 or 7 hours, and then suddenly there's a knock on the door and say, okay, you're up. Okay. And it's tough to stay mentally ready that whole time. It's almost like a Zen process. You got to chill until you're ready to go.
Right.
But I truly love the animation thing, and I really do. And ironically, I can't say anything yet, but because I haven't even got it yet. But I'm up for a series right now, and I'm shortlisted on 2 of the main roles, and I hope to know in a few days whether it goes. Because if it does, it'll be a rather big one.
Nice, awesome.
Yeah.
And I know that you auditioned for all the Ed Boys, right?
Were
you satisfied with the final results of the actual voice actors that got them?
Oh yeah. I mean, you look back now, you're like, it's certain shows you look back at and you're like, no, nobody else could have voiced it. The Eds were perfect. The Kanker sisters were perfect. Johnny was perfect. It's show is, I don't know, as close to perfect when you compare, I think, the voices to the animation. I think it truly is. It's near perfect. I think.
I think so too.
It's a perfect match. It's a perfect match. That's what I'm going to say. There's no such thing as a perfect show, but yeah, I think it was a near perfect match.
I would agree. And I want to ask something about the industry real quick. So, would you say that the entertainment industry is more, or should I say, like less chaotic in Vancouver than it is in LA?
It may even be more chaotic here. It's insanely busy here. Probably more so than in Los Angeles. I mean, prior to this kind of shutdown with the virus thing and all that, I mean, they were literally running out of crews to work shows.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So people in the industry, like 30 ADs are becoming second ADs and first ADs like within a year, kind of thing. Like they're moving up so quickly because of the demand, and a big chunk of that has to do with the Canadian dollar. I mean, when the Canadian dollar is 25 cents to the US, you see production here spike tremendously because I mean, it goes from you have a $10 million show, and then suddenly you have a $12.5 million show, and that $2.5 million goes a long way to do a lot of things.
Right.
So there's that. There's tax incentives in British Columbia and Vancouver. So I know a lot of states in the United States, Georgia for that matter, we're trying to get a lot of filming done there. So they were putting incentives in as well, but the dollar is a big difference. So yeah, it's crazy up in Canada. It's really busy. Toronto and Vancouver are extremely busy.
Cool, because I'm actually on a more personal note. A little bit about me. I'm I'm pursuing visual effects, and I want Yeah, I was looking to going to LA or just around there because of in-state tuition. My tuition will be covered because of, federal aid and financial aid and whatnot.
Right.
But there's this one school I really want to go to in Vancouver. It's called Van Arts, and I don't know how I'd be able to get any financial help other than a few scholarships here and there. That wouldn't really cover much. What would you recommend to young Americans who are pursuing the entertainment industry? Would you recommend them to go to Vancouver and check it out?
Yeah, I mean, from a work perspective, there would be immigration issues, obviously, to work around. But if you are a skilled tradesperson in a given field, including visual arts and all that, there's a demand for that, and they can petition to get you in and be able to hire you and work. And there's a tremendous amount of that going on. So, it's like get your education and get your skills. And when you're ready, in that industry especially, they can really have you work anywhere. If you're in demand anywhere, they can get you there. So it's like dream big, do it.
Yeah. So Vancouver, a good place to dream, right? To follow your dreams, I should say.
Vancouver is it's a great city. It's really cool, and its vicinity to the States. It's so close. We're essentially a border town. I mean, it's a half-hour drive to the border from downtown Vancouver, 40 minutes.
Oh, okay.
And then being on the same time frame as LA and the whole West Coast. That's why Vancouver works so well, because I mean, executives in LA are still in the office when the executives in Vancouver are in the office. So if there's an issue on set, that's real time. It's not like a New York, LA thing where, something happens at 5 p.m. and it's like, oh, they've gone home.
Yeah.
So I think that's why Vancouver, LA works so well together.
Do you watch a lot of Canadian comedies such as like Trailer Park Boys or Letterkenny?
I watched a little bit of the Trailer Park Boys. I haven't really gotten into Letterkenny. I've seen a little bit, and from what I've seen, initially it didn't really do it for me, but I've seen a little bit since then. It's made me laugh, so I think I gotta tune in and give it a bit more of a try. Maybe one of my best friends, Brent Butt. I don't know if you're familiar with him in Corner Gas. That went off the air a few years ago, but he was kind of groundbreaking because he became essentially like the Seinfeld of Canada. He wrote six. That was based in the small town of Saskatchewan, which is kind of like, it's like I think a small town in the prairies or the Midwest kind of thing. And it was really quirky. It was kind of like, oh God, what was that show a few years back with the really quirky characters? John Corbett was on it. I'm blanking right now. It was a kind of a mountainous kind of town, and everybody was really weird and quirky, and that's what this show was kind of like. But there's not a ton of Canadian comedies compared to how many comedians come out of Canada, to be honest with you. It's unfortunate that our national networks don't really pursue comedians. It sounds crazy, but the comedians in Canada, we complained about it constantly, and a lot of times they don't really look at you seriously unless you've gone off somewhere else like the States and become a bigger name, and then they're screaming to get you back. But it's kind of a strange thing. It's kind of like living at home and nobody really pays attention to you, and then you run off somewhere, and then suddenly they're like, come back home. That's a good comparison to the Canadian industry, actually, when it came out of my mouth. That's exactly what it's like. They're like, they kind of forget about you when you're here, and then if you go off and you do well for yourself, they can't wait to get you back.
Wow, that's unfortunate and funny.
Yeah, but say on a complimentary end, there is a lot of work here, and if you're an actor that's starting out, there are those small parts available. The 1 lines, the 2 lines that become 10 lines and become 2-day parts and 3-day parts. Those opportunities exist here. It's a marketplace and an industry here where you can start, and build your resume. A lot of Canadian actors, when they get to the States, their resumes are enormous. Like you show it to a casting director down there, and they're like, "Jesus, where are you from? Where did you get all these credits?" In Vancouver.
So, would you say that Vancouver is less don't know too much about the entertainment industry in LA, but would you say that Vancouver is less like cutthroat?
Yes. I don't know. Maybe it's just being Canadians and being polite to each other. I think there's less of that. Even in stand-up, I found that. But even you could compare Vancouver and Toronto. And the Vancouver comics, for the most part, there's one or two assholes. Very few. Every town has that. Every industry has that. Very few, though, in Vancouver. I could literally name like two guys that I was like, nobody likes working with this person. But in Toronto, it was more cutthroat. It was more competitive. I think more people were jealous and had disdain when somebody rose up, above you in the industry and became something more than you were, from an industry standard. I did resentment. There's less of that. I didn't feel that in Vancouver.
Okay. Yeah. That might just be like a culture thing, probably.
Yeah.
And so I'm just gonna ask you a few more questions here if you got time.
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. So I wanted to know. Well, I just want to say I don't know how much of Trailer Park Boys you've watched, but the other day I made a comparison that kind of blew my mind. Trailer Park Boys is just Ed, Ed, and Eddie all grown up. Because when they're kids,
that's very I've never thought of that. That's a really good comparison.
Yeah, because you got when they're kids, all they're doing is scheming and trying to make money to buy jawbreakers, right? And you got you got like Julian, who's the big muscular guy who always has a drink in his hand. He's the leader, like kind of like the hot-headed leader. That's Eddie right there. And then Ricky is the dumb buffoon, but he's the muscle. He comes through in magnificent ways sometimes. That's Ed right there. And then you got Bubbles, the smart guy with the glasses. That's Double D. It's all there.
It's all there. You're right.
And all they do is scheme and try to make money.
That's good.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool.
It's good.
I wanted to ask you, are you a big Jim Carrey fan?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Because he also, when you were growing up, when you were doing comedy, you do your impression bits and stuff. Was Jim Carrey a big inspiration for you?
It was, because he came out of Toronto, and then it was exciting being a comic then and seeing other comics do spots like on the Tonight Show or Arsenio or any of the talk shows, and it was really exciting to see. And seeing Jim Carrey on there was so cool. It's so cool, and his impressions were hilarious. Leonard Brezhnev, and then his face would turn into it, and he was. It was there was mainstream impressionists, and he was like way over here doing that.
Yeah.
And that's what made him so unique, and continues to make him so unique. I mean, it's such an incredibly talented guy.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite cartoon growing up that you'd watch all the time?
Favorite cartoon. See, when we grew up, I mean, I'm aging myself, but we watched cartoons Saturday morning. You get up early Saturday morning, that was cartoon day, right? We didn't have them during the week. And it's shocking. I could tell my daughter that now, and she can't believe it. She's like, "What are you talking about? There's no cartoon channel?" I go, "No, it was just Saturday morning. That's it. You couldn't, on demand it. No, it didn't exist." But yeah, I mean, shows I used to watch. And then that's not true. You used to run home sometimes, and at 3:00 they would play a few different episodes of like, He-Man or Spider-Man, shows like that. So those were the big two, all at the time. And Super League, Justice League, Justice League. The DC, the Hanna-Barbera guys used to do like, the Justice League show. That was a more Saturday morning thing, where all the superheroes would do their thing, and that was always exciting. Yeah, and that's where you saw characters, like the Flash, Superman, Iron Man. They would both have stories. As a male kid watching cartoons is fascinating.
Yeah. And so I guess I just have one more question here for you. I really liked it the other day, I think last month, that you posted up a video on Instagram, redoing the voiceover for Rolf.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I saw, people commenting and stuff, and you were writing back, like, very, very interactive with your fans. I really, really
Sure.
appreciate that about you. Hence why I contacted you. And I just want to know if maybe we could get a few lines of Rolf before we go.
Oh.
It doesn't have to be a whole thing, but
I'll give you one of my favorite ones that when people say give us a Rolf quote, and I write this on plank a lot of times. I'm autographing. Is
Do not burn the candle at both ends. It leads to the life of a hairdresser.
I don't know why that's one of my favorite quotes, because it's just funny on so many different levels. But that's like so many of Rolf's lines,
Yeah, they're very meta.
Break the back of a sea urchin. The three shoe beating.
You can go on and on. There's so many. And I remember we would record, the person who would laugh the most was Erin Fitzgerald, who's a voice actor unto herself. She's doing great in Los Angeles. But she used to really crack up bad with the Rolf lines. Like she'd die, and she was like, "Oh my God!" So she would just convulse. So eventually, I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. Eventually, they used to record us all together, and then they split us up. Then they'd say the ads are going to record one day, and then the rest of you guys are going to record. All the neighborhood kids are going to record on another day.
Was that because it's just the group sessions were taking too long because it was just too funny?
Yeah. Yes. We'd laugh, and it took too long, and they're like, "We need to do something about this," and so they split us up.
Just like in elementary school, they're like, "All right, we're splitting you guys up."
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's like a high school dance. Boys, girls, over there. Every now and then you'd interact.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Peter, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, you're like one of my biggest influences ever. You're incredible and a super down-to-earth guy. Just so happy you're willing to just, take the time for your fans and speak with them. It's something that you don't get a lot from celebrities nowadays and actors. And so I just really want to thank you for that.
Well, listen, I want to thank you too for the kind words that you sent along the way, and I'm glad I was able to hook up with you and have a chat, and had a lot of fun doing it. Again, thanks very much to you too.
Yeah, Peter, I hope you have a great day. Thank you for stopping by.